Melissa, I want to take it out to you first because I'm looking at whether these numbers are going to be encouraging enough. 6% uptick in users. Is that the Trump effect? What's actually behind all of this?
The Trump effect. Yeah, I guess we've all been talking about that a lot. I think to some degree, sure, it's a bit of a Trump effect, but I would say it's largely more about seeing the name Twitter in the press more than it is something sort of growth being directly attributed to the president. I think the name has been associated with current events more and more and more, especially in this last quarter. So sure, I think we can attribute some of it to the political and current live events that have been taking place and the conversation around that.
Corey, whether it's Trump or not, does this lure advertisers to start spending a little bit more with Twitter?
Well, we know the answer to that. The answer is no. I mean, these user growth, great. 4% sequentially over year. The user growth has been pathetic at Twitter and has been for quite a long time. If you look back all the way back to the IPO, you've seen 27% user growth over 3.5 years. That is not a big growth business. But you would think, well, at least they could start to pull some more money out of users. And yes, 2.8% growth, as I said, sequentially. That's better than it's been, a lot better than it's been. It still stinks. You know, and it's still on a small base compared to Facebook, compared even to Instagram, where we saw fresh numbers from today. So those user numbers are pretty weak. But when you add to that, their ability to monetize, again, if the users aren't growing much, at least they should be able to, with all the data they said they were going to get about users, with all the ways they're going to be able to find out how to pull numbers out of that. You know, what's the question of sort of what is the revenue base and how fast is the revenue base growing? And the revenues were weak. The revenues were down on a year-over-year basis for the first time ever. But more importantly, the value of a Twitter user is going down a lot. How much they can charge for each user is getting worse and worse. They can't blame it on international. International is still about 79% of the users. The advertisers are just not willing to pay to reach Twitter users, and that's a real problem for this business.
Now, Melissa, to Corey's point, they said there was a great quote in the Bloomberg story saying, coming from Wedbush Securities, saying, when Facebook grows at 4 Twitters a year, that tells you that there's something really wrong here. Is there something really wrong, or are we just seeing a bit of a changing of how they're going to be charging, and will revenue eventually pick up?
I do think revenue will eventually pick up. But look, I mean, I'm a marketing analyst rather than an analyst for investors or financial analyst. And I think when I look at it, it's true. Revenues have been declining, and that's a scary story to hear. But from my perspective, they're doing things that will be more appealing, will make them more appealing to advertisers in the future. They're doing some hygiene. They're getting rid of some ad products that they know don't work. They are focusing on cleaning up some of their measurement. These are small things, admittedly, but they are things that look like they're going in the right direction. Are substantial changes really needed? Yes, I think so, both in terms of the core product and the ad products. I think we need to see some real innovation rather than some of the incremental changes. But from my perspective, the moves that they're putting in place should make them a bit more palatable to advertisers in the future, yes.
Yeah, but these minor changes, a bit more is I would agree. It's not quite lipstick on a pig, but a bit more incremental changes, 2% user growth. When you look at the value of a user, we showed you how the percentages have changed, but just the dollar amount. You know, they got $1.67 per user this quarter, compared to a year ago, I think it was $1.93. The value of a Twitter user, that number should never be going down. They should always be learning more and more about their users. They should find better and better ways to use data. They should have closer relationships with their advertisers. And if you look, I think we've even got those numbers together. When you look at the value of a Twitter user on a dollar basis, again, going from $1.92 a year ago to $1.67 in the quarter they announced today, that's just the wrong direction. And maybe it's because they cleaned something up by getting rid of some advertising vehicles that they didn't want to have around anymore. But losing this NFL contract that they said was so important before, seeing these numbers go down in all the wrong places, it's a real concern. I know the stock was up today, but it's way down from where it was because what Twitter could someday be, it's becoming clear Twitter is what it is and might not change a lot except for around the margins.
I mean, you're right, Corey. The shares are still lagging near a record low for Twitter. Melissa, last question therefore to you, because you talk about the cleanup and you talk about how, you know, some autoplay video, for example, will be less to charge for than other ways of videoing. But what, therefore, do marketers really want to see? What could Twitter do to really start to lure in the advertising bucks and make each of us who are on Twitter more valuable to those companies?
Well, I do think data is a big play here. They're making some interesting moves in their API platform, cleaning it up. I think they're going to be able to monetize to some degree that cleaned up, more hygienic and more accessible data stream. But that doesn't solve the ad revenue problem. I think we need to see some really robust new ad products. It's not going to be about autoplay video. It's a nice move to see, but I don't think that is the end game for Twitter if they're really trying to be profitable in the long term. I think it's something we haven't seen yet. I wish I had a good idea. I'd happily share it. But I think it's going to be some new, it will need to be some new ad product that we just haven't seen yet, or else they're just going to continue to lumber along the way they have.